Mm.
Hello guys, here's Level Up session 46 with Nick Gindraux. Hey man.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey, nice to have you on board. We are here with Jonas De Ro and me, Darek Zabrocki. Wojtek couldn't join us again this week, so sorry for it. But next week he will be with us, so we'll make up for it. And let me show you the works of Nick. He's working as a concept artist in Naughty Dog. You probably know his works from, Amazing The Last of Us and amazing pictures that he did for this project. So I can encourage you to go on his blogspot, nickgindrauxportfolio.blogspot.com, and you can see plenty of amazing concepts that he did, and many of them are just outstanding. And yeah, for us it's a pleasure to have you on board with us today, and we can't wait to see something that you come up with as a demo. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm giving the voice to you, man. And yeah, once again, hey, and nice to meet you.
Yeah, hey guys. Yeah, so my name's Nick Gindraux. Yeah, basically, Derek mentioned I work at Naughty Dog right now. I did some concepts for The Last of Us. And right now I'm working on Uncharted 4, which is a lot of fun. And then let's see. So before that, do you guys want me to sort of give you guys an intro?
Yeah, start
To
with birth. What happened after
start
you were
from
born?
birth. All right.
Yeah, man. Uh, tell me when you are
um,
ready, and I will just lock the screen on yours.
let's see. I was born on the planet Krypton, and then aliens came and blew it up, and I was sent to Earth. No.
Knew it.
Uh, no. Well, I guess I s- I didn't really get into art until after high school. Um, I didn't really know that's what I wanted to do until later. Um, but I don't know what it was, but I think one of my cousins was he was like he was looking into like film school, and at the time I was like looking into business school, which definitely wasn't something that I wanted to do, but it was just something that I felt like I had to do at the time. After high school was like the whole college thing, and then I guess I just made a rash decision and decided to go to art school. And I was also the worst artist in the world, by the way, out of high school. I didn't know what I was doing. My portfolio consisted of
Just
like renderings of people in magazines and stuff like that. And that's what I brought over to the Art Institute. And at the time, they were the only school that would really accept me. But it was definitely a good stepping stone, to kind of jump off from. Um, and anyway, I spent maybe about 2 years at the Art Institute, and I wasn't really happy with like the quality of teaching and just my general classmates there. No one was really interested in uh, like doing art. Like I would try to get people to hang out with me and do art, but no one really cared and didn't really want to. So I quit that school. I left after 2 years. I didn't finish, and then I spent like a year to myself, just learning on my own. And I would actually at the Art Institute I met Shadi Safadi. He was actually the only teacher that was awesome there, and he sort of was really honest with me and like told me what I needed to do to get into concept art. So he was definitely a huge part of like why or what I do today. Um, but anyway, so yeah, so I left the Art Institute and I started doing plein air painting with Shadi. And through Shadi, I met a lot of other concept artists. So I guess right now, if you guys are looking through the website in my sketches section, I have like digital plein air paintings.
Mm-hmm.
And those are sort of uh, those are paintings that I did with Shadi and Aton and John, and these are back like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Um, and that's where we all kind of met each other. And so anyway, yeah, during that year off, I was just doing that and sort of focusing on my own work. And I finally, uh, I tried putting together a portfolio to get into Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, because I saw a lot of great students coming out of there. Um, and anyway, so the first time I tried out for the school, I put together a portfolio, and I went to the admissions, and they looked at my work, and and they told me that I had to work on like my perspective and values and all that stuff a lot more. So they told me to come back in another year. So so I spent a year to work on the portfolio, and then finally a year later I applied to the school, and I was able to get in, fortunately. And over at Art Center, I met like a really great group of people. Yeah, a lot of really serious students, and had a really good time over there. And I was there for about a year. And I guess the summer off of my first year, I found out, like, Aton let me know that there was a job opening over at Naughty Dog, and he was like, "Oh, like, you should try getting into this." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that'd be awesome." And and then also John was there, and he was like, and they were both really encouraging. And anyway, so I tried to put together a portfolio that was sort of like felt like Uncharted style stuff. So I think on my website I might have some like jungle paintings and stuff like that. So that was the kind of stuff that was in the portfolio. And fortunately, I was able to get the job, and and then I've been there since, let's see, that was in 2012. So I've been there 2 years now. But yeah, I mean, I'm learning a ton while I'm over there. I'm surrounded by like a lot of awesome artists, and yeah, it's a really inspiring place. But yeah, I think that's sort of where I'm at now. I've been doing some freelance work. Like last year, I had a chance to work on um, a film with a few awesome artists. I don't know if I can disclose that right now, but that was a lot of fun. I did some like indie, like I worked for an indie game company sort of a few years ago. Um, let's see, it was kind of like a side-scrolling game called Retrograde. That was the first game I've ever worked on. Um, and let's see, that's sort of all the stuff that comes to mind right now. But if you guys have other questions, specific stuff, I can answer.
Absolutely amazing work. I'm just like sitting here going like, what the fuck? Because we're scrolling through work. Yeah, it's really amazing. So how long have you been working professionally exactly?
Let's see, professionally, let's see, my first job in like for doing art was probably in 2011.
Okay.
That was when I worked on the side-scrolling game Retrograde, which was a lot of fun. It was like a really fun sort of first art job.
And you were doing concepts, or were you doing art?
Yeah, I was doing concepts. I was sort of doing like, it was sort of a sci-fi game, so I got to do a lot of the backgrounds and some of the ship designs and stuff like that.
Cool. Yeah, that's really awesome. So yeah, we talked about this before the session, but Nick is willing to show some of his early work with us, because now you're all looking at this beautiful stuff, and it's time to get into the other stuff. So we can all see like how Nick progressed over the years and where he's come from to get to this level.
All right,
that's pretty amazing. I mean, you came out of college and you hadn't done anything with art, and now you're at this level. It's like mind-blowing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was definitely a wake-up call, right? I mean, like right when I started college, I saw like what was being done, and then I had to like be like, oh God, like how am I gonna do this? It's like a huge wake-up call. seeing like what's
Mm-hmm.
coming out of colleges and what's out there currently. So that has a lot to do with like what um, like me just trying to get better is scary. Let me pull up some images here. Let me
Sure.
find
Yeah.
some of this
But
stuff.
so you weren't really into drawing or art before, because the thing is, most people, it's kind of something that they've had all their lives, you know. That's the sort of standard story that you hear, like, oh, I was drawing since I was a kid, so you always have this thing in you. But other people, like you, obviously, just some at some point see the light of creating art. Like, how does that happen?
Well, I mean, I can't say that I haven't been drawing all my life, but I mean, drawing
Okay.
was something as like when I was a kid, I enjoyed doing, but I never took it seriously, I guess, until after high school.
Okay.
But I didn't really, I guess I like in my senior year of high school, I started drawing a little bit more. And it was only until then that I was like, oh, hey, this could be a career. I never really thought of it as being a career until my senior year in high school. But yeah, and then it was just sort of I kind of just dove into it in college when I was at the Art Institute.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, here's a here's a drawing I did in 2009. So this was like 5 years ago.
Uh,
Um,
Darek, are you sharing the
Yeah,
screen
yeah,
right
yeah,
now?
yeah.
Okay.
um, yeah. So this right here, I was like, oh yeah, like here's a cave, and I drew like perspective lines and then didn't follow the perspective at all, and it's like it's really bad.
And you
There's
tried
like
to
no
like
story in it.
force a bridge in there as well.
Yeah, like on the very top left, I was like, oh yeah, it'd be really cool if there was a bridge up there. But it. Let me find some other stuff.
That's great to see.
Um, oh man, okay, I have this one. I used to think that like color palettes were only complementary colors. I thought it was like, I was like, okay, like I'll make blue and orange and that's it. And like it was like really, and I would put it on an overlay layer on top of the black and white, like sketch. And this to me was like a finished painting. I thought this was like done. I was like, oh yeah, like I'm done with this.
Yep, pro level.
Yeah, it's so bad. Like I drew perspective lines and I would never follow the perspective. Like I would just draw the perspective lines for no
Just for the
reason.
sake of it.
Yeah, for the sake of it. But it's kind of funny because it was until I met Shadi at school. I took one class with him. It was like right when he started teaching there, and he only taught there for a brief time. But I showed him my work, and he was, I'm really glad he was super honest with me, and I showed him some of this stuff, and he was like, "Yeah, Nick, this is horrible. Like, you have to redo all of this stuff, and and he sort of told me how to break out of that, and he taught me this couple tricks and stuff like that, and better
Hmm.
ways to work. But yeah, it was only until he told me, he's like, "Hey man, this stuff sucks," and it was like that's when I realized, like, okay, yeah, I need to totally um, change everything.
Hmm.
Like the way that I
Yeah.
do things and the way that I see things. Because, I used to like draw everything and then kind of like put values on top of that, and then I didn't really have a good process. Um,
Mhm.
and then I work very differently now, which I'll share with you guys during the demo.
Awesome. So we are waiting.
Maybe we can see if there's a couple of questions from the chat that we can
Yeah.
ask.
Sure.
Because I saw some. Let me see. Okay, it's okay if you don't want to answer this, but the first question is, Nick, how did you afford Art Institute and Art Center, and how long did that take you to repay? Diving
Well,
in with a serious question.
yeah.
Nice start, Jonas.
Um,
Sorry.
yeah.
No, it's all right.
Um, well, I mean, I've had really, really, really supportive parents, and I guess for the Art Institute, my parents were able to, they had some money aside for schooling, and because they wanted me to get a college education, so since I was a kid, my parents kind of saved money for that. But Art Institute definitely wasn't as expensive as Art Center. But anyway, that year off when I left school, because I was only at Art Institute for about 2 years, so for a year there was like no school tuition. Um, but then when Art Center started, I knew it was a lot more expensive, so in order to help my parents out, I was able to apply for scholarships and stuff like that. So I was able to get, let's see, I think they might have covered like 40% of it or 30% of it, something like that. And but and again, I was only there for a year. So and then again, my parents are really supportive, so they were able to help me out with all that, with schooling. So, but I hope it's not like it doesn't discourage you guys. Like if, for instance, like money's really tight, like you can always apply for scholarships. I mean, there were a lot of kids at Art Center that were there, like like Art Center was giving them a full ride basically because those students were so awesome. Like their work was so good that Art Center was covering everything.
Okay.
It's not impossible. I mean, if Art Center is like the place you want to go, and you just do a ton of work and show them that you can do it and apply for as many scholarships as you can. That it's totally possible. But if not, I mean, you can get student loans and stuff like that. But obviously know what you're getting into, know how much money you're going to be paying back. So make like an intelligent decision as to like know what your own financial situation is and if you can do it or not. But if you can't go to those schools, like I did a lot of my learning sort of outside of school, right? Like I feel like I learned like a lot when I took a year off of school and kind of focused on the things that I wanted to focus on. Um,
Was that just
yeah,
because you were practicing a lot, or did you have anything to
yeah, I
aid
mean, I
you?
was like trying to draw every day, and
Yeah.
usually in school, they'll give you, in order for it to be accredited, right, they're going to give you classes that are sort of like, math class and writing class and stuff like that, which, takes up time when you go to school. But yeah, what I ended up doing when during my time off, I just used that time to, just draw every day and paint every day. And, I had a lot of buddies too. Like I was able to talk to Shadi during that time and talk to Aton. I was able to email them stuff, while I was still learning. Um, and they would give me, critiques and stuff like that. So, that helped a ton. Just
Hmm.
going out on your own and kind of uh, asking for help from other artists and seeing it with different eyes because there's only so much that you can do yourself, until you have to sort of ask someone to with fresh eyes to look at what you're working on.
Yeah, so it's kind of like you reach these breakthrough marks, right? Like because of someone else's insight, suddenly it's like you take these huge leaps in how good you are. You know what I
Yeah, yeah. I
mean?
mean, they're like yeah, like risks, right? I mean, when I left school, like that was a risk in terms of like my education, I guess. But I met Shadi, and I was able to learn a lot from him. So that was like a really big sort of pivot point, and
Yeah, yeah.
introduced me to like a lot of other artists that I didn't know, and a lot of those artists are some of my really good friends today. Like Aton,
Awesome.
John, Aaron, all those guys. Like I met them when I was still a student, and we're like really good friends now. Like we hang out all the time, and like mess around.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, those guys are
You're
super
like the
cool.
naughty dog 18.
Oh man, yeah, those guys are like, yeah, I can't say it enough, but they're like super inspiring. It's like I go into work and I see what they're working on. I'm like, oh God, like how am I gonna do something like that even is half as good as what they do. Um,
It's funny because when we had Aiton on the show, he said exactly the same about the other guy. I bet everyone says that, and everyone probably feels that as well. You know, it's good that you step up each other's game, that you keep like pushing each other to raise the bar.
Totally. Yeah, and it's great to have like a good group of sort of friends to do art with.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people are sort of outside of LA and are trying to look for someone to like critique their work or like work with them, but like we live during a time now where you can just go onto the internet and do like Google Hangout session like what we're doing now and paint with each other and give each other tips and stuff like that. I mean, me, Aiton, and John, like we still do Google Hangouts with each other and like we work on our personal work together doing all that stuff. So
yeah, that's really cool. I do that with the Level Up guy as well, with a bunch of Polish guys as well.
Totally. Yeah, and it seems like you guys have like a good, a solid crew, right? Like it's like you, Darek, and Wojtek, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I guess now we are. It's still pretty new, Like we only met like beginning of this year, but I feel like a lot has changed and a lot has happened. But it's definitely true that when you just work together or hang out with other artists who are good, you can really help each other get better and push the quality of every piece, because I always feel like someone else has a valuable input. Like if I do a piece and I don't ask anyone for advice, every single time if I would have asked someone for advice, it would have been better, like 100% of the time. There's always something I feel that the person can point out that you just missed for some reason.
Yeah, because when you are working alone or you just don't share the work with the other guys, it's like you can't really get the other perceive, that they have the different perceive on the
things. Yeah, it's like a fresh perception.
Yeah, exactly. Perception. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah, they'll definitely point everything out, like all the things that you didn't see. Yeah, they'll definitely point it out, and what they see is probably what your audience sees, right? So,
yeah, exactly.
It's important to listen to other people. I mean, obviously, it has to be people that you sort of trust and like like you like their work.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, everyone's opinion is valid.
Yeah. And as you said, it's awesome that the other people that you are sharing the work with, they are honest to you, and they can point out the things without telling or hiding the truth, or just telling you are good. That they can point out the things that to make the work even better, and just a good critique from the friends is like priceless. So
right. Yeah, totally. Let's see. Sorry, I just see like a couple questions. Do you mind if I answer?
No, sure. I mean, if you want to moderate your stuff, easy for us.
Let's see. There's one from Eduardo Arambula. I actually went to the Art Institute with him, and he's an awesome guy. He does like animation and stuff. He says, Nick, do you still get nightmares of a giant butterfly chasing you around in an empty football field?
Okay, backstory time.
What happened? There was a backstory to that. I actually don't know what we're talking about, but no, I guess I don't.
Not anymore.
Unless there is a backstory and I totally forgot and like totally erased it from my memory because it was so traumatic. Let's see. Sorry, let me just. Let's see. Someone says, Nick, what are your views on mentorship? Do you give them out yourself? Right now, I currently teach at Otis College of Art and Design. There's a lot of great students over there. Having a good time teaching them. So for them, I do give them a little more attention than I guess other people that might message me, but that's because they're my students in my class.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely okay with people emailing me like a piece and asking for critique. I'll I don't have a problem
That's cool.
answering questions and stuff like that.
You're going to regret this so badly. Now your inbox is just going to be explode.
No, because I remember when I was like a student and I would try to email some artists, and not a lot of people got back to me. The only person that ever got back to me was Shaddy, and
Okay.
like that's why I got a lot better. I think is because he was the only one kind of answering my questions and giving, doing paint overs for me and stuff like that. And
Yeah. Yeah.
but anyway, it helped. So I kind of want to do the same and help
Mhm.
people out.
So is that like the question that is repeated a few times again already? So what are the exercises that you found most important for you from the art schools that you attended?
I guess it depends. Like for myself, the thing that I think worked or helped me the most was painting outside, like doing plein air
Mm-hmm.
painting, like studying color and value, like in reality, rather than just like staying inside your desk and like, or in your home, just, staring at a screen and not going outside. Like
Mm-hmm.
you have to go outside to actually see what, how color works and how values work and stuff like that. Um, and I guess in terms of like what some of the most important things that school taught me, I guess when I was at Art Center, I learned a lot about design and how to make designs work. Um, so they taught a lot about like the functionality of things and
Mm-hmm.
how you can make the function of something be the design. Yeah, and they had like a lot of great teachers teaching that kind of stuff. Like we had a class called like Way Things Work, and we got to take things apart, and then we had to do like an exploded view drawing of it. So we had to draw all the parts that were in. So I took apart like a lawnmower engine, and we had to sort of draw every component that was inside it, and you had to sort of draw lines to where everything fits together. So that in that class I learned a ton.
Hmm.
But generally, yeah, like painting outside, you'll like I learned the most. And doing master studies, like finding artists that you love and you kind of want to mimic, and just doing master copies of your favorite artists.
So did that help you mostly inside your like painting process in terms of like color and value mostly? I'm assuming like knowing what colors to
Um,
use or how to render
yeah,
lighting or what.
yeah, because you get to sort of see the artist's decision making, right? Like you can see like, oh, why did they use this color as opposed to that color, and you can see sort of why it works for the painting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but anyway, that was that helps a ton. When you study an artist, you can see the shapes that they used, and the colors, values, the storytelling, the composition. So that's a great way to learn as well. So doing master copies,
Yeah.
going to museums, right? Like exposing yourself to artists that you might not have known about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all that good stuff.
Awesome. Uh, Let me just ask you the question. Maybe it's more related to Naughty Dog.
Sure.
Uh, Julia is asking, is it possible to get a job at Naughty Dog on the junior level positions?
Um, I guess we don't really have like I guess junior level positions, but when I started, I was on contract, so basically that was almost a junior level maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but not to say that I mean they gave me the same exact tasks as they would anyone else, right? It was just kind of like the contract was temporary, but after a few months they decided that they could keep me. So I was able to like show them what I can do and stuff like that, and then I was able to kind of stay there, thankfully. But in terms of the junior level, that there aren't really any junior level positions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But uh, I don't know. I guess just put together like your best work and just put it out there and just try to go for like the regular position, like the main position.
Yeah, I mean like in case you fall off a cliff there'll be a position opening up, I'm assuming.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and like it won't be the end of the world if you don't get in, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
just work on it more and then apply again the next year. I mean, like you're always gonna face that. Like sometimes you don't get things on the first try. Uh, so you gotta. There's always you can always improve. So
Mhm.
don't think that you're stuck or anything like that.
Mhm.
But would you advise people to wait until they're to a certain level before they apply, or would you
Yeah, I mean,
advise to be persistent and do it several times?
yeah, yeah. Obviously, kind of know your own ability, right? Like if know that you'd be ready if someone were to ask you to draw something, know that you can draw it, and know that you're confident to perform.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, I guess if there's a certain place that you are looking into working, make sure that your quality of work is around the same level. Because when you start working there, they're going to expect that same quality out of you.
Hmm.
So um, I guess those are just the main things to keep in mind before even applying for like an art or concept art position.
Mhm.
But it's funny because do you feel like your perception of how good you are can change over time as you set your own standards? I mean, like we were looking at your early work before, and you mentioned that you thought like, hey, it's done, and it's funny that
Yeah.
you actually think that
Um,
it's good even though it's not sometimes.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you have to sort of like constantly step out of, right? You have to like disconnect yourself and then look at it more objectively. And again, having people come by and tell you the truth.
Mhm.
Um, and that'll sort of like raise the bar and like knowing what your potential is. Because it was only until like I started making better pieces that I was like, oh, I can make it even better. I can make it better. And then like every time you do something, it's like you push it even further and further and further.
Mhm.
So that's sort of how you can gauge. I mean, at the time when I applied, I didn't think, I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready, but like you're always gonna ask yourself that question, right? Like if you're ready or not. And sometimes you just have to like, go out and uh, and apply
Mhm.
and just try.
You talked about the tricks before. Don't you mind me asking about it when you just know some tricks and it helped you at the beginning when you just started out? And is it like the textures or some specific things that Shadi teach you or?
Yeah. He definitely taught me how to see like shapes. Like if you look at, I don't know. I mean, like if you were to look at a landscape, like before I used to just kind of like if someone told me or someone took me to a field with trees, actually maybe it'll be easier if I were to like draw it.
Sure, go
Um,
ahead.
like
It'd be more
for
awesome.
instance, I used to be able like if someone took me to a field and was like, okay, Nick, like draw this scene. Like I wouldn't know where to start, right? Like I would just start by like making like the tree. I'd try to draw every single leaf, right? And then I'd like draw like the tree like that, and then make the little line, and then try to draw the grass. And I wasn't seeing the overall shapes, right? Like I guess if someone were to ask me like, hey, can you paint? If I were to do this again with what he kind of explained was thinking about the shapes, meaning like, oh, like think about the general masses. Like, okay, that's a big shape, and then there's like the horizon there, and and then like designing what that shape looks like. Like making an interesting looking tree.
Mhm.
Um, right, like doing that kind of stuff and seeing the overall shape of something before, you know, before sort of render because I used to try to like render everything as I would
Hmm.
go along rather than like plan it out and sort of figure out what it is I'm painting. But I mean, this is kind of the way like he taught me to see things in shape, right? And I'll go over more specifically what he taught me during the demo.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that was like the biggest thing, like seeing things in big shapes and seeing things in like light, like I guess for instance, if I were just really quickly, like let's just say that we have a person's face, and then before I'd like try to draw it like this, right? You're like, oh yeah, like, and then you think that like in order to make it realistic, you have to add like more details, but that wasn't the case. I guess I learned that it's more about like the shapes that are hitting it. So for instance, like if this guy's now in light, like okay, so his eye sockets might be in shadow, like his nose might be casting a shadow, and his like mouth is casting a shadow.
Yeah, and you're like
Um,
describing the form with maybe only two values, for example.
Yeah.
yeah, like yeah, describing things in only two values. You know, uh, that kind of stuff definitely helped like a ton when I was learning. Um, and and like I finally realized that like realistic things are just like values and shapes that
Hmm.
are placed I don't know, like in a realistic way, like the lighting is accurate. Like I've started recently paying more attention to lighting, because more times than not, like something that's lit properly will look more realistic than something with a lot of detail, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, focus more on the forms and how the objects are shaded and what's the relation between the objects.
Right.
Yeah, I think that I had also the same that I started painting or drawing, and I really like to put the details at first, like painting every one hair, and it was like Jesus. So yeah, so
Right.
did you also develop your line art somehow, or you just made some drawings from during our planners?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely learned a lot about drawing when I went to art center. They were like really focused on drawing, so I learned a lot of like the construction drawing over there. Like I don't know if you guys have seen Scott Robertson's book,
Yep.
How to
How to
Draw.
draw? Yeah, it's awesome.
So basically, like if you want to take an art center course, but you can't buy that book because everything in that book is what we had to do in school. Um, like it was literally like, okay, week one, like in his book, it sort of like outlines the entire class. So,
Yeah.
if you can't, you know, come to LA and take a class at Art Center, then I would suggest getting that book and doing every exercise that's in there, because that's sort of all the stuff that we did.
Yeah, so guys, if you want to check it out, we've already recommended the book before, but it's on our website in the resources section. So if you go to fusroda.com, go to the resources, you will find a link to Amazon where you can buy Scott Robertson's book. So now Scott's going to give me $5 for saying that. I think if you are okay with it, Nick, maybe we can move on to the demo part because we were like 45
Yeah.
minutes in. So I
Sure,
think
yeah,
people
let's
are
do it.
like, they're like, come on, give us the
Yeah.
juice already. So, yeah. But we gotta tease them a
Yes,
little bit. You
totally. Yeah. So anyway, I prepared a sketch beforehand, and I'll show you guys sort of the process and what I do to sort of take it further. So anyway, yeah, let me show you guys. Okay, so here's a sketch that I was working on.
Nice.
Basically, the first thing that I wanted to do is come up with a story. So I guess the story for this, I was like, oh, like maybe it could be cool if there was a farmer pulling like a hind helicopter out of his barn. Like maybe he was hiding it or something, and like he's pulling it out with a tractor. Um, and the idea behind this is sort of like what I was trying to explain is seeing things in shape, like in lighting. Um, Seeing things like you're designing with light. And if you guys look at Nathan Folks, he has a video on YouTube where he explains a little bit about this process. Um, and he sort of goes over like how to see like value shapes, and you sort of design your composition based on the lighting, I guess. So it's kind of a little bit of a different way of thinking, mainly because like it's composition where you're looking at like the design abstractly, like okay, there's a
Yeah.
triangle here, right? There's like a rectangle here, and then it's only two values, so you can sort of really, really simplify what you're trying to show.
Hmm.
And and this is something that like a lot of artists stress a lot, right? Where it's like, um, how do you make it read really well? And like before I started working like this, I would start with a drawing and then start trying to render it, and I wouldn't know what the overall composition was going to look like, mainly because I was sort of trying to figure out the lighting as I went along.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with this method, I'm able to figure out the lighting from the very beginning, um, and I'm able to see generally what the design of it is going to look like. Um, So that's kind of why I like to work like this. Um, and I mean, I still like you can still draw. Like I would draw this beforehand. Like if I were to, um, like for instance, you can still draw, right? Like here's the barn, and then, whoops, like, hang on, oh God. Okay, so here's the barn, and then, okay, here's the door, and then you kind of like go back and forth with painting in solid masses, and then um, you're kind of drawing and painting at the same time, right? Like trying to figure it out, and then playing with the negative shapes, right? Excuse me. So like I wanted a helicopter here, so I was like, okay, maybe how can I show that helicopter? And the best way was to show, the light against the dark.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of the composition, it was like, okay, well, maybe the helicopter can be in light here, and it's against the shadow, so it's silhouetted, light on dark, as opposed to dark on light, right?
Hmm.
Um, so anyway, that was sort of the reasoning behind this sketch. But anyway, I'm gonna like show you guys how I like to move forward with a sketch like this. For instance, if someone asks like, okay, now we need a let's see it in like value. So I'll show you guys how I paint within this. Um, and it's going to be a little bit confusing. This is all in one layer right now. Thankfully, this session's recorded, so if you guys forget, you guys can sort of rewind the video and watch it again. But anyway, so I have it painted on one layer here. What I like to do is I'll go to the channels, right? So you have red, green, and blue. Right now, um, there's no color, so they all appear the same when you click them. So anyway, I'm just going to click the red channel, and if you hold Control and then you click on the little thumbnail, it'll give you like the marching ants. So what I like to do is I'll select the inverse, which is Control Shift I, and then I'll fill that in with a dark color, and then I'll put the background in white. So if I were to turn this on and off, it's sort of like an alpha channel. And just to show you guys really quickly, um, like if I were to take a red color and start painting, it only will appear in the alpha area, which is the white. And then, if I were to make a clipping mask, which is, you make a new layer, you hold Alt, and then you hover it between the two layers. There's like these two circles, and you click it. It makes a clipping mask. So then that allows me to only paint within the shadows. So this is like how I like to get started and paint within this composition.
So this key,
And
this you're doing this to help your overall form, like value separation, like
yeah, exactly.
exactly how it is.
Yeah, it maintains it throughout the whole process
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that I don't lose sight of it.
yeah.
Because a lot of times, like when I used to just kind of, and again, it's like different for everybody, right? Like everybody has a different process. But I've found over the years that this is the way like I feel like my brain works best, and everyone has a different sort of way of understanding. But I just really like this method. Um, so anyway, so once I get it to sort of this state, I'll begin by sort of toning the canvas. So what this basically is kind of like an underpainting, right? Like when you're like doing an oil painting, you usually do like an underpainting, right? And the underpainting is sort of figuring out the lighting and the graphic shapes. What this method does is sort of makes me think of those sort of traditional methods. So anyway, so right now I'm kind of toning the canvas. I'm getting rid of all the dark values, the really, really dark values, so that it's kind of like a mid-range. Because if you start painting on top of the solid white and solid black, you know, your eyes are going to get confused as to like what values it's seeing. At least for me, like I would get confused sometimes when I was when I'd be working, and and if I were working on like solid black or solid white, like your perception of value will be affected a lot.
Is it also because you're trying to give yourself more value range to play with by decreasing the contrast like that?
Oh, by decreasing it?
Well, like
Yeah,
you're decreasing the overall contrast, so
yeah.
you can go brighter and you can go darker if you want to,
Oh, yeah.
instead of being at
Exactly,
like
yeah.
the limit.
Right, yeah. So it allows me to introduce different values. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's exactly the reasoning. So then the next thing I might do is sort of figure out my values. Like, you know, I'm still keeping it simple. Where I'm like, okay, maybe the roof is somewhat of a lighter value, right? And sort of trying to figure out what looks good, and you know, maybe there's like a little bit of specularity, so I'll put like a little bit of a gradient on it. Maybe it's, I don't know. I'm thinking it's kind of in a snowy scene, so maybe there's kind of a sheen to it. And actually, you know what? I would actually put this on a separate layer, that one piece there. And let's see. Okay. Um, and then, so yeah, so the next stage for me is like separating each object and separating them into their own value key. Um, so for instance, right now I'm gonna paint sort of the bounced light that might be on this the hind that's in the farmhouse. So I'm sort of right now I'm just kind of figuring out, you know, where the wheels are sitting, and you know, how the tail looks when it's in shadow, because I wanted the helicopter to be partly in shadow. Um, so right now I'm just sort of figuring out what those shapes would be within those dark values.
How much would you say of this, you know, being able to draw like this comes from your knowledge, like visual library and stuff? Like, for example, you're really able to draw this helicopter, simplified but really accurate feeling, with just a few values. Does that come through
Um,
your practice and experience with drawing vehicles, or?
yeah, I guess it's a combination of things. I mean, I definitely was looking at a lot of reference when I was drawing this, like doing the sketch. So, you know, I'd have like a photo of the Hind helicopter up, and I was kind of looking at it and trying to get the sort of main shapes in there, right? Like getting just the cockpits alone kind of already told me that it's a Hind, you know, because it's like very kind of iconic. So getting those kind of accurate helped a ton. And then same thing with the tractor, you know, like getting the shape, like indicating like there's a big wheel and a small wheel, and then like there's a guy sitting on the top. Those are kind of things that um, I was looking at and picking up on when I was trying to indicate these forms. Um, let's see.
Yeah, it's really incredible because the thing that amazes me most about this approach is how you're actually combining all these skills at once in a very simplified form, because you're doing your drawing, your perspective, your composition, your lighting, everything's like in that basic sketch, everything is already there, and all the rest is just sort of juicing it up and adding details and stuff. And I feel like that's what makes it so powerful and gives that often graphic nature to it.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of why I like it. It's kind of like what I mentioned before. Is you can see it sort of, you can see the composition before you're done. So you kind of, you know what I mean? Like, because I used to like panic a lot when I would be working, and then it's like there's like this time where you just like have no idea what the painting is gonna look like, and you're in that kind of like panic mode, and you're like, oh god, like I hope I can make this work. Um, but with this method, I found that it sort of forces me to figure it out before, excuse me, before I even start rendering, so that I can know if it's even worth taking further.
Yeah, that's
Um,
definitely a good point as well. No surprises.
right. Yeah. So right now I'm just kind of separating the value of the door. So just adding, I'm slowly introducing more values. Let's see. And again, I'm like painting above and below or within the layers, so I'm trying to keep it organized. And it might be a really weird thing to understand at first, but give it a shot. Like for those of you guys watching, because you'll be surprised. Like it might look like it's kind of confusing, but well, once you jump into it, I think you guys will get the hang of it.
Yeah, and guys, if you want to know more about similar techniques, check out our session with Aiton, which was like 30 something. And Shadi also has a video tutorial on YouTube that's definitely worth checking out, like a 10 video series where he explains his process as well. So yeah, definitely check that out. It's good stuff.
Yeah, and I learned a lot of this stuff from those guys. So if you guys are wondering where it came from, a lot of those guys kind of taught me to see things like this. And right now I'm just kind of like painting the tree, like separating out the values, figuring out, maybe there's like dark, maybe there's dirt. I kind of want it to be like a snowy scene. Maybe there's dirt here, and grass, stuff like that. Whoops.
But it's cool to see that you guys learn so much from each other, because I also feel like there's a huge consistency between the quality and the sort of feel of a lot of the work that Naughty Dog puts out. That's really nice to see that coherence, I think, because
Yeah,
it's
totally.
so beautiful and so matching. You don't get that like jump in quality or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't stress it enough. I mean, I learned so much, like a lot, from those guys. So, finding people that you can sort of work with and learn from is really, 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 really important. Yeah, because I learned like everything from the people that I hung out with.
Let me see if there's. Oh, sorry. Let me see if there's some more questions.
Sure.
Okay, Espen asks, "Hey, what brush is that?" It's only because Espen is asking it that I'm gonna ask you what brush it is. It's the hairy brush, isn't it? It's the
Oh
ultimate
yeah,
painting
that's
brush.
the one from Yama.
Yeah,
His brushes are awesome. Like I love his brushes.
yeah, they're fantastic.
They're really really cool. You guys should definitely download them. I think they're available on his DeviantArt, I think, or on his. He might include a link on his Facebook.
Yeah, and
But
they're on our website as well in the resources, so you can find them anywhere, or go to his session. There's links as well, I think. Session with Gemma, which is really good.
Yeah, his brushes are some of my favorite. Let's see. Yeah, this one right here. This one is the buttery, the buttery brush.
Is that your personal renaming of it?
Yeah, the butter brush.
What's the
It's like
deal with
the.
all the butter?
I
Where
don't
does
know.
it
It's
come
well,
from?
I think it came from um like I think we were at like an art gallery like in Pasadena looking at Edgar Payne's work and Edgar Payne's like a he's like a an old uh, oil painter who I think he was around in like the 20s or 30s. Um, and anyway, so we were looking at his paintings and like looking at the brush strokes and like how thick the paint was. You know, a lot of times, you know, when you're oil painting, like an instructor will compare the oil paint to butter. So it's like we're just staring at the paintings and we're like, oh God,
Okay.
like look at all the
So
butter.
buttery.
It's so buttery. So anyway, that's probably where it came from.
Okay.
Um,
All right. I thought the story would be kind of in a
a little
different
bit
direction.
weirder.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I wasn't sure.
It can definitely get weird, but
Yeah, yeah, you can go there, right? Let's
but I
not go
think
there. It's
that
PG here.
might be where it came from. I'm actually not too sure. I'm just kind of like guessing that's where it came from.
Okay.
Um,
Maybe someone in the chat knows the true etymology of
yeah, the true meaning of what butter means.
Here's a little bit different question, but it's just a question about your taste. Long Arm
Sure.
asks, what is your favorite movie in terms of art direction? So I guess
Oh
like
man.
design and colors and all that kind of stuff. So maybe some
Um.
of your favorite.
Oh man. I think one of my favorite movies in terms of design. Okay, well maybe there's two. One of them has to be uh, Hook, just for nostalgia's sake. Just 'cause like I
Okay.
loved that movie when I was a kid. But I mean, it like actually got me really, really excited about, um, like just production design in general because there's so much that went into that movie. Like all the
hmm
costumes looked really cool, and I don't know, I just thought it was a really inspirational kind of film. But I guess on a more serious note, maybe the original Star Wars movies. I mean, that might go without saying, but um,
Yeah.
that those movies are definitely like the most like I forgot how awesome they were. Like I was watching it again recently, and they were like mind blowing. Looking at it today because I probably haven't watched it since I was a kid. The original ones, and then I watched it again, and then upon seeing it again, I was like, oh my God, it was insane.
Yeah, it's funny how your perception changes as a kid because there's some stuff that you saw as a kid and you kind of remember it as being really realistic or really cool or really well done, and then you see it later and you're like, Jesus, like that looks freaking horrible. And then other stuff holds up really well, you know.
Right. Yeah, totally.
One of my favorite movies as a kid was The Neverending Story. Did you ever see that?
Oh yeah,
But it's
Falcor.
so poorly done. Or Willow. I don't know if you've ever seen Willow. That was also one of like the early fantasy
I
movies.
I didn't when I was a kid, and then like I tried to like recently, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. Like I can't watch it.
Yeah, I can imagine. But actually, as a kid, I remember it had a huge impact on me. And I remember that three-headed dragon looked so real, and like, oh my
Yeah.
god, it's so awful. It's worse than like 1920s Godzilla movie. It's really
And there
insane.
were those like beetle things, right? Like those were. Was that or was that something
I don't
else?
remember that actually.
Maybe I'm making this up. I don't...
And another great
um.
one is Legend. That's also another awesome, really old school. Uh,
Oh yeah, actually, I still haven't seen that movie.
I think that's still worth seeing. Like the design is really over the top, but like the design of the devil character, I can't remember his name. It's like so over the top, but it's so iconic at the same time. I think it's really, really cool, even though it's like a little bit outdated now.
Nice. That's a dude with like the huge horns, right?
Yeah, and his head
Yeah.
is like massive. You know, it's not like
Yeah,
just
yeah.
oh, stick some horns on his head. Like his head are the horns. It's like horns with a face on it.
Right.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you some more questions.
Sure.
Okay, so here maybe to get it a little bit more lighthearted, can you share a funny or remarkable thing that happened during your career?
Well, let's see.
Maybe like a huge faux pas, or I don't know, something.
Yeah, let me try and
If you want to
think.
share it, of course.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a lot of like embarrassing things that have happened to me, but let me see if I can like remember any specific moments. Let's see. I'm like blanking. Let me try and think of a story. Because there's definitely like a lot of funny things that go on at work all the time. Like I'll actually, Aaron and Aton, they like we all mess around with each other, and
Hmm.
John, we all mess around with each other at work, and we'll like like draw dicks on each other's
Draw
screens
dicks,
and
yeah,
stuff
that's kind
like
of what we're
that. Of
waiting for.
course, like,
Standard.
but uh, I'm trying to think of like something specific. Um, let's see.
If nothing comes up, it's fine. We can skip the question.
I mean, I really want to answer it. I mean, I know there's funny things that have happened to me, but I just am blanking right now. I can't think of anything.
Okay.
I'll try
No
to come back
worries.
to it if I think of something.
Yeah, cool. No worries. Okay, something else. Can you talk a little bit about your life outside of painting? Like, um, like what do you do when you don't paint? Do you have any other hobbies or stuff that inspires you? Or
Yeah, I mean, I have like a motorcycle that I like to work on. I bought a bike like a few years ago, and um, I sort of converted it into a cafe bike. Like a cafe racer. And I did that with my dad. And my dad actually used to race motocross. Um, and so my dad's like super into motorcycles. And so anyway, we kind of worked on this bike that I bought together, and it definitely gave me a better understanding about sort of like um, uh,
like industrial design
yeah,
or
industrial design and what goes into stuff like that. Um, Yes, but yeah, I bought like a Yamaha RD 400 and uh, just converted it into a cafe bike. But yeah, I mean, I like working on that. Let's see, other stuff. Just hanging out with friends. Like your basic stuff. Let me try and think of other things.
for example, when you're working on the bike, are you still thinking about art? Are you
Oh
like
yeah, I
working
mean,
on it and
it
going
was
like,
like
oh, this piece is cool. I gotta remember how
yeah,
this looks.
totally. I
Okay.
mean, it was kind of awesome because it was like a big sort of art project, right? Where it's like you're the decision maker, you're the one that's gonna um, you know, make it what you want it to look like, right? So
Yeah.
there was like that whole aspect to it, which was a lot of fun for me. Um, as an artist, because you get to put yourself into it, and you know, uh, like figuring out like why certain proportions look good and why others don't, stuff like that.
Yeah, it can be like
Um,
really simple things, but you just learn it by observing.
totally.
Yeah.
Um, so like, yeah, I guess that kind of stuff definitely uh,
Okay.
inspires me and sort of
Uh,
like I like doing all that stuff as hobbies.
this actually leads me to the next question by Sagar Musk. How do you get motivated to create new work? Do you get inspiration from pieces of, for example, your favorite concept artist, or what is your thought process?
Yeah, for like new work, I guess. Let's see. Yeah, a lot of it comes from looking at stuff online, looking at what other artists are doing, and me getting excited about what's out there. And I guess generally like just the fact that since a lot of us do a lot of creative work, just knowing that you can create something and then sort of, and just do it. It's like, oh, I want to paint a guy like pulling a helicopter out of a out of a barn, and then knowing that you can kind of make it work and you can make it a reality. So that's definitely really inspiring for me, like knowing that we can just paint whatever comes to mind.
So, for
Um,
example, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
So, for example, with what you're doing now, how did that come to mind exactly? Was that inspired by anything particular, or were you just like, in your mind
Well,
going like, oh, that's cool?
well, I think yeah, a lot of it was just me like wanting to paint a helicopter, and I was like, oh man, helicopters are really cool. So that was like a lot of it, and another part of it was like, okay, well, how can I make it somewhat interesting, and not just exactly what it is. Like oh,
Yeah.
I want to paint a helicopter, but it's like how do you want that helicopter to be presented? So like what kind of a story do you want to give it? So that kind of stuff definitely excites me. Where I'm like, okay, well maybe I'll come up with like a little bit of a story. Like it's nothing unique or crazy, but it's at least a story that we can loosely understand by just seeing it. Like a simple composition of it.
Yeah, but I think it's a lot already because a lot of people skip this step and they just do, an environment piece. I mean, in terms of production, it makes perfect sense to do this sometimes, but it's always cool that when you can add this extra layer to it.
Oh, right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, a lot of times it's like I used to, yeah, like this method also helps me with painting more like intimate scenes, I guess, and more sort of I don't know, like closer up shots. At least it forces me to do that. Um, and I found that I like that type of art. Um,
Do you mean
so I
more
mean that
intimate pieces, like
yeah, like
not
sort of
always?
like story moments and stuff like
Mm.
that. Like I'm really into sort of where your focal point is kind of like really close to the viewer.
Okay.
Um, I guess I just kind of like that aspect. Um,
Okay. Yeah, it's really coming together. It looks great.
oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm like still kind of in that like, oh God, oh God, oh God. Like how am I gonna make this work?
So, are you keeping everything? You're keeping everything separate. That's like significantly different value, or
Yeah, I mean, it's not as organized as I'd like it to be, but I would probably make the light of the light color of the helicopter in um, its own layer, and then the shadow side of it's in its own layer. So I can go back to each layer and sort of, make it more specific by what's it called? Isolating it because it's on its own layer. So that's sort of how I would have liked to organize it. But
Mhm.
right now, I'm just kind of like a little bit more disorganized than I'd like to be.
Yeah, it's the time pressure, right?
Yeah.
Pressure to
Um,
go.
right, exactly. Where I'm like,
Hundreds
oh
of
God, oh God, oh
people
God.
watching.
Yeah.
Someone's asking a little technical question. Do you play with the opacity while you paint?
Generally, I use the opacity on the brush. Like I let the brush's opacity be, um, like be my control. But I mean, for like atmosphere and stuff like that, I might lower the opacity a little bit. But generally, I like working with opaque paint or like digital paint, like opaque brushes where it's like really hard edges and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of important for this technique because you have to be very, how should I say, confident and sure about the value statement that you're putting down. So making it too transparent would sort of beat the purpose in a way.
Yeah, yeah. I found that I guess personally, like a lot of my decisions are based on what I'm comfortable with or like things that um, ways of working that I like to work or what works best for me. So again, it's going to be different for everybody, right?
Yeah,
I
of
think so.
course, yeah.
Just fixing some of those proportions. But yeah, I mean, hopefully this is sort of something that you guys can try out and see if you like it. Because I mean, I know it helped me a ton. So maybe for those of you guys out there that are looking for kind of a different way of working, maybe try it out. It definitely helped
More
me a ton.
questions coming in.
Sure.
Would you recommend, it's a little bit in the same direction, would you recommend practicing drawing in a single layer and without using Control Z?
I mean, I feel like if I were to practice doing that, I'd do it on paper, or like actually do it on paper. Um, but I love Control Z. Like it's my favorite tool. I mean, maybe it would be a good exercise, but personally, I haven't really tried because it's like that's kind of what Photoshop does. But yeah, maybe it would be a good exercise. I think I can explain to you like the beauty of Control Z though, if any of you guys don't like Control Z. I mean, the reason why I like it is because I can put a stroke down and then decide, oh, that's not a nice shape, so I'll undo it and then do a better stroke. So I'm constantly trying to make a better stroke by undoing and then redoing.
Yeah, instead of
And
like noodling around, right?
right, yeah, a little bit. I mean, and since it's digital, you kind of have the freedom to do that. Whereas, if it's if you're working in like acrylic or oil, it's definitely. I mean, you can still noodle around in those mediums, but you definitely can't undo.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, I like using undo, so yeah, I think that might come down to personal preference.
Yeah, I guess the reason Ivan's asking this question is because he is wondering what could be the benefits of restricting yourself. But then, like Nick is suggesting, maybe you just should draw on paper or paint on paper and learn from
Yeah,
that.
because I mean that'll definitely like restrict you, right? Where you're like, okay, I
Yeah.
literally can't at all. But as far as like exercises like that, I mean, I personally haven't really tried them. Um, I mean, I'm sure it helps for some people, but I like using the program for what it does best. So it's like, oh well, Photoshop can Control Z easily, so let me just use the program for what it kind of does.
Yeah.
But in terms of like exercises, I mean, you can definitely just get out a pad of paper and be like, you know what, every single like stroke that I'm gonna put down is gonna be final. So yeah, you can try that out. I mean, you can do that digitally too, but I guess personally, I don't tend to work like that digitally.
Okay. All right. Next question. Okay, here's a more personal question. How do you go about making a deal with the devil? Are there any special tips or tricks you can offer to do so?
Let's see. First, the deal has to be like you have to get $1 million out of the deal.
Really?
Or
He's
no,
into
more than a
money.
million. I mean, what am I
Really?
saying? It has to be $1 billion if you're making a deal with the devil. The other
That
thing
little
is,
that little gold digging bitch.
what?
Okay. No, I was talking about the devil. He's a little gold digger. I was
Oh
wondering.
yeah. I thought-
Okay. Thanks, Andrew, for the very serious question. I guess what he's trying to say is that he's really amazed by your work. A lot of people get this sort of think that it's this sort of divine thing, but really it's not. We're all just humans, and it just comes down to practice and knowledge, and
Right. Yeah, and a lot of it is just like making a lot of bad paint. Like I've done like a lot of very, very horrible things. Yeah, I
yeah, you
mess
have
up a
to.
lot. Don't be afraid to like mess up. I mean, I'm still like I still mess up a ton. Like right now I'm kind of like, oh God, like how am I gonna fix a lot of this? So yeah, I mean it's all relative, right?
Yeah, and it's a never-going process because as you get better, you always set the bar for yourself higher, so you're always like being confronted with new conflicts within your own
Exactly.
skill. That never stops, and it shouldn't stop actually. If it stops, then you have a problem. You should always keep going.
Right. Yeah, I guess right now I'm just sort of I'm starting to add in some other details, like plants, like, okay, if there's grass, I'm gonna make sort of a softer edge on that dark value, and maybe I'll come in and sort of add a couple of twigs here and there, in the foreground to kind of show that, oh, it's like you know, there's plant life, like a little bit of plant life in the scene as well.
Hmm.
Um, but anyway, this is all stuff that I do for as a sketch. So like if I were to take this to a finish, I would probably like I would still use it as a guideline, and instead of sort of rendering everything, I might start adding like photograph elements. Like I might actually find an actual photo of a hind to put in there and stuff like that and make it more accurate. But in terms
Hmm.
of a sketch and getting the idea across, I like to just kind of paint it in.
So when you're adding those elements, like those grass bits and stuff, you're obviously thinking about the composition. So how do you decide where to place an element in your scene to make it feel balanced out?
So that again goes back to why I like doing the graphic method, because a lot of these shapes, I'm adding the grass within the dark values. So the main overall shape is still maintained, but
Right.
it's only now I'm adding more strokes, right? Like if we were to, um, I guess, let's see, how can I show this? If we were to just look at this, right, like the composition is maintained,
Hmm.
it's just it has more values now. So that's kind of like I spent a lot of my time in the beginning figuring out where those elements were going to be placed, and then now I'm kind of just following those rough guide. I mean, it's like a gesture line, right? Like it gets to a
Yeah.
point where you just kind of follow it, and then um,
And then
wherever
you
you
add
put
like the
it,
micro detail. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So now it's just like small brush strokes, and now's the time where I can do those small brush strokes. Whereas in the beginning, it's like I couldn't focus on that at all until it was sort of figured out to a certain point where I was happy with the overall composition. Um,
Hmm.
so I guess that's sort of the methodology of where I'm placing details and stuff like that.
Okay. I have a question to actually bring it back to the previous subject a little bit,
Sure.
because we were talking about like the quality of your work and trying to get better. Someone is asking, are the illustrations of The Last of Us you got on your portfolio the usual concept quality standard you work with, or are those more marketing illustrations? I guess the question is kind of like, what's actually the real level of quality that you see in the total amount of production work, or are you just putting out
Um,
the best pieces, or
yeah, I mean those were like that's kind of what's expected.
okay.
I mean like yeah, because like looking at Mache's work, because Mache did a lot of stuff, concept art for The Last of Us, and you guys had him as a guest as well, so you guys definitely should check his work out for those of you guys that haven't seen it. But like when I started and I was looking through the concept art folder and I was like, oh my god, because Mache's work was there, and I'm like, how am I gonna be able to do this? And like that was sort of the bar, and that sort of forced me to be like, okay, like it's time to learn how to, make it more detailed and more photorealistic and stuff like that. So that definitely like pushed me to get it to
Hmm.
that state. But yeah, it was
Um,
like really scary opening that folder and like seeing his stuff. I'm like, oh
yeah,
god.
holy shit. It's just like an explosion in your face. And that actually leads me to another question that I kind of have. Let's say that you have to
Sure.
use some 3D stuff in your
Uh-huh.
work, but you like this sort of, free and graphical approach that you're doing with painting. How would you combine that? Would you do a sketch like this first and then model something to fit it with the lighting, or would you do the other way around, or how would that work?
Yeah, it's a good question.
It's my
Yeah,
question,
generally.
yay! Sorry, I shouldn't be
No,
self-promoting.
yeah, no, it's I think that um yeah, I mean it would definitely help to do a rough like really rough. I mean, like if I were to just let me just show you a quick example. Like if I were to do this
Okay.
same scene and I wanted to sort of figure it out before I kind of blocked it in 3D, like it would literally I would spend like maybe 10 minutes on it and be like, okay, like figure out the main things that you want in the scene where you're like, and this I might figure out just in line. So I'm like, okay, well, there's gonna be like the helicopter here, right? And then, okay, I want like a rectangle here, kind of a thing. I want the tractor here. I want like tree shapes here, you know. So
Mhm.
like really figuring out very basically what you want. And then taking it to 3D and be like, okay, well, I know I want something here, here, and here. So just sort of getting a rough idea. But if I were to, like combine it, um, I would approach it the same. Like when I'm designing my lighting in 3D, I have a lot of this sort of stuff in the back of my head where I'm like, oh,
Okay.
right, like I want the lighting to dictate the composition. So then I'll try to find like interesting camera angles and stuff like that, and lighting scenarios. And 3D is a really, really great way to explore all of that too. So um, yeah, definitely give 3D a shot in your workflow.
So guys, if you want to learn more about Nick's approach with 3D, he has a couple of Gumroad videos out. So if you go to his blog spot that we told you about in the beginning of the session, there's also a tutorial section there, and you can check out his tutorials. One of them is using 3D for 2D illustration. So I guess that's where you explain what we're just talking
Yeah,
about now.
yeah. So in that video, I just explained kind of the process, and it's a very similar process to this. It's just thinking graphically and um, just same sort of stuff.
Yeah, that question was actually a very convoluted way for me to promote your Gumroad. Thank you.
That's all good. Yeah, thanks by the way.
No worries, no worries.
But yeah,
Okay,
I mean,
guys.
I'm like trying to
Yeah.
experiment a little bit with learning how to implement 3D more and more and more. Sorry to interrupt you.
But you're only using it like when you think it's beneficial over painting, right? Because a lot of
Yeah, I
times,
mean, things that I might not be able to figure out, like really crazy angles, or like if I'm gonna heavily design something that I might reuse over and over again. I would probably do it in 3D. And also a lot of it comes from me just I really like the 3D process, like myself. It like reminds me of, like building with Legos. It's kind of like that kind of um I don't know, it just feels nice. Like I just like using 3D.
it's nice to have the sort of feeling of total control. That's what I like about 3D. Like you can fix everything to the
Oh yeah, totally.
yeah.
Um yeah, and like the perspective is all figured out, right? And you're just kind of like you know,
Yeah.
and like seeing, moving everything around, you could just see it like happen right in front of you.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a really, really cool way to work. For those of you guys that um, want to try it out, like I highly suggest implementing it into your workflow.
There's actually a question that's kind of on the opposite spectrum of what we're talking about now from Tag Monkey. Nick, is it possible to work as a professional concept artist only with 3D tools? So maybe some post work in Photoshop, but no serious painting. Is there anything like 3D concept art at all?
Um, I think that it's becoming more popular. Yeah, that will be possible. I mean, I know a couple people like Gavril. I don't know if you guys know of his work. I think you guys had him on here before.
Yeah, we
Um,
did. Yeah.
yeah, so Gavril does a lot of 3D concepting, and he's able to make it work. But he also
He's still
does
able
a
to
lot of
paint.
drawing.
Yeah,
Yeah, he
he can
does. He
still.
does both. So it's important to kind of have that um, sort of, like if someone asks you for like a quick sketch, it's still important to kind of be able to do it. If you can do it quickly in 3D, then I wouldn't see a problem, but
Mm.
only until you can sort of, make it, do something really quickly in 3D that I think you can do it all in 3D. But I mean, I definitely can see it in the future being like possible to only do 3D. I mean, 3D tools are becoming like really, really I mean, they already are really powerful, but um, they're becoming more easily sort of accessible and like for people like artists, it's easier for us. It's getting easier for us to understand.
Hmm.
Um, at least for me, at least.
Yeah,
Um,
in my personal experience, I can definitely see it in the film industry as well. Like
mhm.
I've worked with a couple of 3D concept artists, and all they do is 3D. For example, I worked with one guy, and he was actually 3D set designer, which is not really
Nice.
an existing title yet, but you know
Mhm.
it worked, and he works on a lot of big films, and he actually does complete sets and everything, just completely in 3D. I think he uses Rhino or something. And then a lot of character artists are also fully 3D. You know, you have ZBrush artists who do very
Oh,
little.
right.
So I think there's definitely place for that in the industry.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I agree. So, I mean, it's important to, explore other sort of art, like creative tools, like
Hmm.
3D. So, and not to say that it's not like it'll replace 2D either. I mean, it'll just be another tool, right? And it's just another
Yeah, yeah,
thing to help with the design process. Because I
yeah,
mean, mainly what we do is we're trying to design, um, and anything you can sort of use to help design or come up with an idea, use it. I mean, if it's there to help you.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. They exist to complement each other. I don't think any of those will ever be ruled out. You know, some
yeah,
people are worried about people with only 2D skills to run out of jobs. It's absolutely not true. I know people who can only draw. They only
yeah.
know additional drawing and they have jobs.
Right.
And
Yeah,
then
or like people like just who like to just draw on paper, and like paint,
yeah,
like there's still a lot of production artists out there that paint with real media, and I guess the reason why they're able to still do that is like their ideas and concepts are you can't beat them, right? Like they're awesome.
yeah, I think
Um,
Alan Lee and John Howe did almost all of the designs for Lord of the Rings, the trilogy, of which none was digital. It was all on paper.
yeah.
And
Yeah, which is super inspiring to see because it's like, yeah,
yeah,
these guys are able to do it. Like,
and it's freaking
um,
amazing.
yeah. But I mean, if still, yeah, just explore. Do anything creative. I guess. I guess is what I'm trying to say. Anything that helps you design, whatever method you work in best, like do that. Um, and yeah, for me personally, it's like um, doing this kind of stuff helps me. So it's whatever you guys. Uh, Again, like I guess I can't stress it enough. Whatever works for you.
Yeah, yeah, that's just something that you have to figure out. That's like the
Yeah,
path that you're taking. That's the fun part of it as well, I think.
yeah, yeah. Because there's no. I mean, I guess there is a standard of quality, but there's not a standard of style, right? Like there's no style that you have to do, um, as long as
No,
it gets a
no.
message across.
Yeah, and I think that's the fun part about it as well because like everyone has a style that they're pushing in a way, like naturally. But then you see other stuff that's maybe a completely different style, but it's still really, really good, you know. And it's interesting to see how different styles can still work and have their own artistic value.
Totally.
That's what makes the art scene so interesting, I think. Um, Someone is asking. Well, some people are talking about your layer structure because they're a little bit think that you. How do you manage your layers? How do you remember what you draw
Oh,
on each layer? Do you group?
okay. Yeah, I kind of deviated away a little bit, and I just started painting like on top of everything. Like sometimes when I do these sketches, it gets to a point where I just start painting on top. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but the only time I pay attention to the layer structure is like in the beginning, when I'm like initially kind of figuring out the big shapes,
Mm-hmm.
and then I might actually like. I think a lot of it is also because I'm trying to do this quickly. But if I were to sit down and kind of be a little bit more focused on this, I might make these a little more organized. So, for instance, like all the grass stuff would be on one layer, the tree would be on one layer, the helicopter would be on its own layer. Um,
So you'd
and
simplify it again. like how
Yeah.
it was initially, more.
Yeah, so I mean, what I like if I find myself getting carried away with the layers, I could always just take the lasso tool, select the helicopter, right? And then, outline the whole thing and then, copy and paste it and then
Hmm.
start working within that layer. A lot of times I actually would do that, like sometimes you kind of start all chaotic and then because it's just like coming out that way,
Yeah.
and then sometimes you'll be like, oh, how do I bring this back and organize this? A lot of times, it might be a meticulous process, but I'll like lasso every element at a certain point, and then separate them into their own layers, and and then start painting within it again. So you're almost like starting over again, but they're all on different layers. Um,
But so you're very unlikely to change your composition at this point, right? Because that would
Yeah, no,
screw
I
everything up.
wouldn't because it's sort of like I initially made it that shot and placement of values from the
Hmm.
beginning. I might make subtle changes, but for the
Yeah, yeah.
most part, that's kind of like how I saw it, like when I initially wanted to do this painting.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't deviate that much. I might come in here and be like, okay, well, maybe I want let me see here. Maybe I want there to be a harder edge of light on the snow. Maybe there's like a tree that's occluding the light. Maybe
Hmm.
I'll make small changes like that. But in terms of like what the big shapes are, I think um, what's it called? I don't deviate much. The only thing I'll change are uh, like the values, like how accurate my values are, or how wrong, how like incorrect my values are. And it's like the process of fixing and all of that. So
Yeah, because composition is really, how should I say, sort of fragile thing in a way, you know. Moving something around in the middle of your progress can kind of screw it up, or, you know.
yeah, I mean it could go one or two ways, right? Like sometimes it could be like a really good way to
Right, right.
take the painting in another direction, or it could be
Hmm.
a really bad way. Like I used to run into the problem of like over rendering or like overly sort of changing things, and I guess again, like with this method, it just forces me to kind of stick with what I had initially because there was something about it that I liked, and
Mm.
then uh, everything else sort of comes afterward, I guess.
Yeah, it's like it keeps certain freshness to it as well.
Yeah, and you can kind of maintain some of those original brush strokes, like some of the strokes that I had in the beginning of this sketch.
Hmm.
Actually, if I like toggle the layers really quickly, um, they're still there,
Yeah, yeah.
and I might not change them because I liked the look of them, so I'll just kind of keep those. Um,
Yeah, because the early stuff is a lot of times the most expressive, right? Because you haven't been noodling on the same
yeah,
stroke.
exactly, and you always want to kind of avoid like noodling a certain area for too long, or like to the point where it's like overkill, and
Yeah,
that's something that
I have that
everyone
problem a
struggles
lot
with.
actually with
Yeah.
overkill. I find what helps for me if I really want to noodle on something, because like sometimes you have to paint over a photo, so you're kind of forced to noodle in a way. Is like I like to just like squint really, really heavily, so that it's all like blurry and high contrast, and then it's like easier to see how to noodle right. Let's call it.
Yeah, like yeah, I guess that brings up a good point where it's like where is it necessary to noodle and where is it unnecessary to noodle? Um, I guess it's always
Yeah,
like yeah, you're trying to find that balance.
yeah, it's a horrible struggle. I hate it.
The struggle, it's so real.
Yeah, but painting in a way is like a wrestling match, isn't it? Like, or a
Oh
fixed art
yeah.
painting, you know? Like you're constantly wrestling with getting these small things to sit right. And
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the whole process. I mean, every time, like it never changes. I'm always like, oh, they're like, no, like it has to be like that. You know, you're always like
Yeah.
fighting with it and kind of like
Yeah.
wrestling with it and like cursing and all of that.
Yeah.
Um, until you're happy with it or somewhat happy with it. Until another person looks at it and is like, hey man, that looks stupid. You have to like
And
repeat the whole thing again.
then you're like, fuck this.
But yeah, but it's it's always. I mean, I always struggle with every piece, so.
Hmm. Okay, here's another question from Alexander. How
Okay.
much time does it take you to produce a final art piece like the pieces you did for The Last of Us?
Let's see. Those probably took around, um, let's see, about around 3 days, maybe, considering like the amount of revisions and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, like 2 to 3 days.
Hmm.
That's sort of like the entire design process, like the ideation, like them coming to me and saying like, oh, we need this, this, and that, and then from that, it's like me kind of uh, doing initial sketches, and then finding something that I like, and then going, rolling with it. Um, yeah, and then all the way up to like revisions, like if there were certain details that I didn't include that I need to add, um, all that fun stuff.
Have you had to deal a lot with you know, tons of revisions, or has that generally gone pretty smooth for you?
Yeah, I mean it goes pretty smooth, but of course it's like there's certain things that need to be changed in order for like the gameplay to work,
Hmm.
or certain things that like us as artists might not see. Like
Yeah.
um yeah, like the gameplay part of it. Like a lot of that is sort of like you don't really think of that until like the game designer brings it up. And you're like, oh, like you're right. Like that wouldn't like of course he can't walk. Like there's certain angles where the characters can't walk up, and sometimes you have to like adjust that. You
Hmm.
know, um,
Have you ever had the feeling that something that you've had to include has lessened the picture or the image for you?
personally, yeah. I mean, sometimes, 'cause like usually there's something that you want to hang on to until like the very end. And then someone's like, "Oh, actually, can we take that out because of whatever the reason is?" And yeah, I mean, there's times where I think that it might have compromised the
Hmm.
piece. Like anytime that someone asks to put like way more stuff in the painting, I generally like will start not liking it as much. Where it's like you have to show like a lot of things going on. Where they're like, okay, there's like an explosion and a guy jumping out of a building, and in the second you have to add like a ton of stuff. When the simplicity is being taken out of it, is when I guess that's when I'm thinking that it might sort of, it's not what I want anymore. But again, you have to sort of please what it is. You have to do what it's asked of you, right? So,
Yeah, it's your job, right?
but I mean, you can give your own input and tell them why something might not work or anything like that. But generally, you gotta consider everyone's opinions, and um, it's like constantly changing. The process is like very organic, so you have to be kind of open to anything, really.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Here's another question. Again, a bit more technical.
Okay.
How did you get this good at values? Do you have any tips about dealing with values?
Um, I guess a lot of it comes down to um, like observing a lot, like going outside and noticing what values do, like in reality, or like how they work. Um, and I guess a lot of it also comes from, yeah, like the plein air painting. Like I learned a lot from just painting outside. Um, but and also just practicing, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work. So there's like a lot of things that you can do to kind of get better at that. I mean, I still struggle a lot with it. So I'm still learning how to make more accurate values.
Looks pretty damn accurate to me. Okay.
I mean, I'm like, oh God, like how do I make this reborn? And like trying to subtly change some of the values. Anyway.
So, Nick, if you had this opportunity to go with that very accurate value picture like you have right now to put some more colors and start coloring it, is like, is there any problem for you, or you just go and adjust the layers, and how do you proceed? Maybe I'll ask.
Oh, like if I were to take this into a colored sort of
Yeah.
state. Yeah, I don't like I used to like when I was in school, I used to like, do the value painting and then take like an overlay layer and then start putting overlay colors onto it. But generally now, if I were to take this into a colored piece, I would actually start over. And it might sound counterintuitive, but it's sort of like I'll actually show you as an example quickly.
Okay.
Let's see. Let me duplicate this.
But do you still use stuff from the original sketch, or would you literally like say, okay, I'm gonna start right over?
Oh yeah. I'll show you guys what I mean. So let me get back to our sort of original. Okay, so here's the layer. So I'll start back from this stage, and again, like I won't like for color pieces, I might not start with a value sketch. The value sketch is mainly just for the idea. But for stuff in full color, I'll jump into it in full color.
Yeah.
And it would be a similar process. So I would like tone the canvas. Like I'd be like, okay, well, I kind of want, blue values for the snow down here. Maybe there's like blue values up there, and then I'll think like, okay, maybe the roof of this is like red. So making like blocking it in the same way, but with opaque color.
And also thinking of value at the same time as color.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of how I would approach it if I were to do it in color. But again, we all kind of work differently, right? So it's like I found this method works best for me, and it helps me sort of visualize like the color, like the simple color block in, right? Like it's like, okay, well the helicopter is going to be green, so let me just get some green in there, right? And then be like, okay, the tractor will probably be around the same color maybe. But anyway, that's kind of how I'd like start, and it would obviously I would like adjust the colors. This is just a quick example. I might come in here with a hue and saturation and like edit them individually to like see what I like. Edit the values. But that's kind of how I would start it if I were just to do it in color. Yeah, so I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thanks, man.
Yeah, definitely. So do you always put that much work, like preparation, into a piece where you like do like a proper value sketch before you actually jump into the color version?
No. I mean, I do it sometimes if I'm like having a hard time, but generally, like now when I work, I'll just jump into like the color like right away.
Because you have the confidence in the experience, right? Or
yeah, I mean, a lot of it also comes from like I don't want to spend too much time trying to figure it out in value and then have to do another one in color. But if you have the time and the luxury of that, then yeah, it's a good way to work. Like figure out the values first and then jump into color. But like with this method, my value breakup has been figured out in the beginning, right? So the rest is sort of like paint by numbers, right? You just kind of add colors to the shapes afterward.
Yeah.
So yeah, with this method, you kind of figure out graphically what the values are going to look like before you even, before you even jump into the color.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I hope that kind of
Yeah,
clarifies.
yeah, definitely. Thanks.
Yeah.
Someone's asking about your equipment. Nick, what do you use when you do your digital plein air painting? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Actually, Shadi has a thing on his website about the setup. Let me see if I can pull it up really quickly. One moment. But generally, it consists of like your laptop, a tablet, like a stool to sit on, and then a shade box. Like you need something to block the light from your computer if you're sitting in the sun, because it's going to greatly affect the way that you see things on your monitor. It'll like blow out your monitor, so your color, like you'll take your laptop home and then you'll look at the values and colors and be like, oh God, everything's off and wrong.
Yeah.
So anyway, here's like a, whoops. Oh, hang on.
Nice mountain. Argentina.
Yeah, that was from Shadi's trip to France, I think. Anyway, so this is the thing that Shadi put together. Here's the basic construction. I can post this into the level up if you guys want, or
Yeah,
you guys
sure.
can
Yeah,
just
of
visit
course.
Shadi's website. But it consists of illustration board, and you make this collapsible box. So when you collapse it, it's
Oh, you
flat.
make
And it
it.
will fit.
So you
Yeah, you
actually
make it
build it.
yourself.
Okay.
And then you can put that in your backpack, and it's like it's really easy to set up, and you just unfold it and you put your computer in it, and then you cut a little window out so you can see your monitor. And with this sort of method, it's hard to get your hand onto the computer when you're outside, right? Like for your shortcuts. But one thing that like I like to do is assign the shortcuts, right, to all the buttons on your Wacom tablet, like all the buttons that no one uses.
Yeah.
I try to use them all as shortcut buttons, so I never have to put my hand onto the computer while I'm working outside.
So you can
Um,
easily just switch between using just your tablet for shortcuts and using your keyboard.
yeah, I mean, I assign all of the shortcuts onto my buttons on the tablet, so I
Yeah.
never have to like touch the computer. Or I'll use the Photoshop menus to like get to where I need. But I mean, you can build this where the whole like the whole door in the front like is non-existent, but more light will get into the box, and
Yeah.
so like I guess that's the reason why there's a window, because the window blocks like the most, like all of the light.
All
Um,
right.
and let's see if he has a photo. Oh yeah, here we go. And then here's a photo of like what the whole setup looks like, right? So when we
Oh,
go
so,
outside, if you can get like an umbrella, definitely get an umbrella if you're out in the sun. I've definitely gotten a lot of sunburn. It's like really simple stuff, but it
yeah.
helps a lot. Um,
Yeah.
and all this stuff can fit in one backpack. Like we used to put all of this stuff in one backpack, and we just have like these huge bags with all this stuff, and then you
Human
go
brain for
hiking.
assessing danger and potential
Potential
mates.
mates. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Um,
And you're impressing people. They're like, "Hey, what are you doing? What's
yeah, a
that?"
lot of people would like ask us questions, and like it got
Yeah.
to a point where we'd like wouldn't know what to tell people, and be like, yeah, we're like, I don't know, geologists. People, because people don't understand. You're like, oh, I'm drawing, and they're like, what? You're not drawing. You're like on the computer. So a lot of it is like trying to explain to people like what it is we're doing.
Yeah.
Um,
How
so
do you deal with the battery life? I mean, like you don't really have that much time to
yeah,
spend.
so the battery life, I'll show you guys. Let's see, let me open up um, these things right here, these Energizer external batteries are awesome. It'll add at
Okay.
least 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours to your laptop. And what you do is you charge it beforehand, and there's a little meter on the front, and when you press it, it shows you how much battery life is left. And it comes with a lot of different adapters to fit any kind of laptop. And before buying it, make sure that it can connect to your computer. I think it costs like maybe $100, but it's a really good investment, especially if you're outside a lot or if you're away from like outlets. Like I bought like two of these things, so I'll be
Yeah,
able to
that's
like
really
sit out. I could sit outside for like all day if I wanted, and I'll just sort of um, plug it in again if it runs out. Um,
Is it heavy? Like, how's the weight?
oh, it's really small. It's like the size of like a portable hard drive.
Okay, like the small ones that you find nowadays, right? Like a
Yeah, yeah.
like a
Like
wallet size, so more or
yeah,
less.
it's like a wallet size thing. Maybe it's a little bit bigger, but
Yeah.
they're not that big. Um, and yeah, I mean they're totally worth it, especially if you spend a lot of time outside with your laptop.
Yeah, I think it's great when you're moving around with your laptop. I mean, I'm definitely gonna actually look into that.
Totally.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's one of the best investments I think that I've made. Because I use it a lot, especially when I was kind of painting outside. Um,
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, we will probably add that to the website. We put all kinds of stuff that you can use for getting better at digital painting. We put it on the website in the resources section, so check it out if you haven't yet. Let's see. We can probably have time for a few more questions, and then we'll have to start rounding up because we're almost hitting the 2-hour mark. Don't
Okay.
forget to save your painting, Nick. I mean, I don't know.
Oh yeah,
Like,
I haven't saved it all.
okay.
So yeah, remember to save.
Yeah, and you think like it'd be fine, but actually we had a session with fuck, who was it again? I'm having a little
With
blackout
Miles
right now.
Johnston.
Oh yeah, exactly. I forgot. Who it was.
Oh, I think I was actually watching that one.
Yeah, it was
and
with Miles, and he wasn't saving as well. And literally 10 minutes or 20 minutes before the end of the session, he had a power blackout. Like, what are the odds, right? But so everything's gone. Yeah.
that sucks.
Poor Miles. Well, poor viewers actually.
Well, it lives on in the video, right?
Yeah, true. Yeah. You can see the whole process, so that's
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, right now I'm just adding some particles to kind of like wrap this up, and and again, like if I wanted to spend more time on this, I could just spend time fixing the values, making sure like everything looks right. And again, this is just a sketch. If I were to like take this into a full piece, I would start introducing like photographs and stuff like that.
Yeah, but it really shows your solid understanding of fundamentals because everything's actually already there, I mean, you can add stuff, but you've actually already nailed the image in a way. To me, at least.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's like
All right. Well, I hope it's I hope it's sort of it's helpful, but yeah, I hope it's something you guys can like try out and stuff like that. 'Cause it definitely helped me a ton.
Someone in chat says, living in South Africa, we are not able to go in public with our laptops, not if you want to keep it.
Oh, well, yeah, that's the other thing is like, definitely don't bring it out to where you don't think it's like, where you're going to be safe, I guess, right? But I'll leave that up to you guys to kind of decide.
I'll give $50 to the first guy who does a plein air painting of a ghetto. There we go. We can probably ask you our final, most important question, and then
yeah,
bring it on.
let's go for it.
You can do it, Darek.
Okay, I'm a little bit sick today, so sorry for my
Absence.
Yeah.
It's all good, I understand.
But I'm watching and I'm very, amazed by your process. But let me just ask this question. If you had the chance to choose, would you rather be billionaire or Godzilla? And why?
Oh, dude, I'd be a billionaire. I mean, I don't know. I think being a billionaire would allow me to do. Well, okay, if I were Godzilla, I wouldn't be able to draw anymore. Um,
With
but if I were a
fire, maybe.
billionaire, I could
Yeah,
like genetically engineer Jurassic Park. You know, I could make Jurassic Park.
so you'd be a
Yeah.
billionaire to create a sort of Godzilla. That's kind of the purpose.
Oh yeah, dude. That would be the most ideal situation. I want to make Jurassic Park like for real.
Yeah, I remember when I watched that. I wanted it to be real so bad, despite all the horror that goes on in all the movies. It's just like
Right,
the idea
yeah.
of it. Because most kids, like young boys, have this. I don't know if you had a dinosaur phase, but I had like a dinosaur phase in my childhood.
Oh
I was
yeah.
just, I guess every boy has it, right? Where you're just obsessed with dinosaurs. You're like, holy shit! There used to
Yeah,
be
of
these
course.
huge reptiles, and they were like eating each other. And it's so badass, you know. And it's still really badass if you think about it. I guess it's kind of sad because in art it's become somewhat kitsch in a way.
Mhm.
If you don't do it right, but still, it's like
Oh
instant.
yeah, like dinosaur illustrations.
Yeah, like no one does it, right? Like no concept artists really do it, and it often looks a bit kitsch when they do it. I mean, to me at least.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But I think it's kind of a
Um,
pity because they're so awesome.
oh yeah, yeah. You can't beat dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are the coolest.
Yeah.
I think the new
Cool.
Jurassic Park is coming out, what, like next year or something, right?
Oh yeah, I heard about that. I had no idea.
Yeah, I think it's
Um,
called Jurassic World, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 2015.
Yeah, it's upcoming one.
Ah, Chris Pratt is playing the main lead. That's interesting.
cool. So do you guys want me to post this up on the level up?
Of course.
Okay, cool. I might work on it like a little bit more, and I'll post it up. Just
Yeah,
if it's
sure. I mean,
other
take your
shapes.
time. There's no rush. A lot of guests just sort of, if they feel like they finish up the painting in their free time, then you can just post it in the group or in the event later on, so people can check it out. They can follow
Sure.
your work and all that stuff. So, yeah, definitely save
Cool.
it, and we'll give you a Dropbox link so you can give it to us, so we can
Cool.
steal it. Because we're actually stealing PSDs from all the awesome artists. We're creating like a sort of a database. And we're
And
putting
not
it,
share them.
yeah, we're putting it in an underground bunker. So when there's an
Oh.
apocalypse, it's
Nice.
safe, you know. To
Um,
acknowledge.
yeah, I'll save it out, and I'll give you guys the PSD as well. Awesome.
All right, cool. So, yep.
Yeah, I don't know. Did you guys do like critiques and stuff like that, or is that something for another session, or like another day that you guys do that?
Well, actually, normally because we've started kind of using more of a template for our sessions to keep
Yeah.
things a little bit more organized, and we're
Yeah.
actually thinking of doing critiques at the end of the session. And
Oh, I
normally
see.
Darek would be doing that now, but he's feeling a
Cool.
little bit ill today, so
Oh, okay.
we're gonna skip it for today because he's
Okay.
not feeling so good and Wojtek's not here.
Alright.
But that's kind of the format because the overpaintings, it's kind of hard to combine it with a guest and have to interrupt them. So we will start doing that separate from now on. So we will have like
Oh, I see.
6
That's
or
cool.
7 guests and then just 2 or 3 hours of overpainting in one session. So it's kind of separated.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome that you guys do that. I definitely wish that all this stuff existed when I was like learning, because you guys are like giving out like a lot of really, really good information.
No, you guys are giving out a lot of good information.
Well, I mean, like with your critiques and all that stuff, and how, hosting all this, it's like, I don't know, it's like a really good learning tool.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that's. I mean, a lot of people send us very positive feedback, so that's good. We don't have that many haters. Like for our audience, I would expect more. I don't know, like little internet discussions and stuff. But actually, it's quite alright. Everyone seems to be pretty cool.
Mhm.
You're all cool, guys. Everyone's cool.
Yeah. Sometimes there were the posts on the YouTube, but that YouTube just delay the comments after the session, so we don't
Yeah.
see them anymore.
Yeah, since like 3 weeks or something, they changed it.
Yeah,
So.
exactly.
So everything that you're writing now, people, is gonna disappear.
Yeah, that's a
You're
boomer.
safe.
Nice. Well, yeah, I think this sketch is probably like wrapped up, but like thanks a ton for having me. I had like a really good time painting with you guys.
Yeah,
And
thanks for
chatting.
showing. It looks
Yeah, man.
amazing. Looks really, really good.
The pleasure is on our side again.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Means a ton. Yeah, so I'll probably just work on this a little bit more, and I'll post it up on the Level Up or Facebook group.
Awesome. Okay,
And,
so yeah, thanks again, Nick, for your time. Thanks for showing your process. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll be back next week. And yeah, thanks everyone. See you next week. We can end it here.
Yeah, thanks again, guys.
Thanks, Nick. Bye bye. Hey guys.
Bye. Take care.
Later. Bye.